Well, just prior to the Easter break, Club Menangle conducted the J.E. Binskin, the Group 3, in honour of the memory and the outstanding career of J.E. Binskin, John Ernest Binskin. And I think John would have been delighted with the astute front-running drive by James Rattray in collecting the cash with Ignatius. Of course, as far as harness racing was concerned, there was no better front-running driver than the great J.E. Binskin. I thought I'd have a trip down memory lane with his son Darren. Well, Darren, that drive by James Rattray and winning the Group 3 J.E. Binskin was certainly an outstanding performance, one I think Dad would have been proud of.
Yeah, Dad was a great front-running drive, and James was a very good drive on it. He seems to be finding his form again, that horse for him.
Yeah, a very strong performance by Ignatius. Darren, as far as your father was concerned, he was a brilliant front-running driver, and back in those days, it didn't matter if they won by a nose or the length of the straight, they still paid the same.
Yeah, Dad was very patient when he was in front. He wouldn't win by a long way, but he'd make sure that he had everything locked in, that he knew where they were in the run, and he took it to his advantage to see where they were, and he didn't give them any advantage.
Darren, a different story these days on the bigger tracks. It's much harder to produce one of those tactical front-running drives.
Yeah, it is a lot harder, but still drivers can do it. But horses can come from back in the field and come home very fast. So if you haven't got your horse wound up halfway down the straight, you can get smoked right on the line.
Darren, as far as your father was concerned, dual question, his strength as a trainer and also his strength as a driver.
Well, his strength as a trainer was he kept up with the modern day training. He trained heats with his horses. He wasn't a big treater. He fed them well and they got everything, but they never were over-treated, so they could last a long time. They didn't have the high highs, but they didn't have the low lows either.
I know you're a third generation following in the footsteps of your grandfather, Jack, and of course, Dad. And you've also had a very successful career. What were the most important lessons you learned from that pair?
Oh, well, my grandfather taught me to be a horseman, first and foremost. Try to be in tune with your horses, how they feel, how they eat, how they work. He's a great horseman. I was quite young. He was getting older when he wasn't driving at all, but he wasn't even training at that stage. But he took great interest in myself and Dad, and he was pretty forthright when he wanted to tell you something. So if you didn't listen, you usually got a spray.
One of the highlights of your father's career of many, the 78-79 premiership at Harold Park, and in that particular era, Darren, there was just a period of overflowing with champions.
It was, and we only had 6 horses. I actually worked for Dad during that time. We had some nice horses, but we just had 6 horses that just went there and won races at Harold Park, which now, if you had 6 horses and you come and won races here at Menangle, it'd be a great effort.
Over a long period, your father had some wonderful horses, Darren. Able A, Action Advice, 2 of my favourites. Happy Tolliver, Lexington Park, Gary Eyre, Eva Thor. The list just keeps going on and on.
Yeah, you sort of don't reflect too much till you actually have an interview like this on what good horses you have. You're always looking for the next best one. But Dad did have a lot of nice horses. He had a horse called Alakan. I think it still holds the record for the most wins between 2 to 4. By a standardbred or a thoroughbred, which is a great effort in itself to keep the horse going that long. He raced at the highest level in the Inter-Dominion, but he had a very, very good horse called Like a Light. He only ever got beat once. Only that he broke down. He probably could have been his best horse.
Yeah, you just mentioned Ali Khan. That record, Darren, I was going to allude to, 31. So it was an outstanding performance, as you said, standardbred, thoroughbred.
Yeah, and the great testament to that is Dad had him as a very good racehorse. I remember he wasn't a very good stallion. I was only a little boy, and he gelded him, and he come back and he ended up being a very, very good racehorse, particularly because he was a standing start. And I think he held the record from a standing start on a half mile, like it was something like 2-1 or 2-2.
During his career, Darren, did you have a favourite horse?
When you're my age and you're working the horses, you love them all the same. It didn't matter if they were good or bad. Like a Light, I got to drive, and he's just one of those horses. He never let you down. He always won, jumped away from the gate stands very quickly, and he was just a superstar horse. He never got beat at Harold Park for Dad.
Darren, your father was held in very high esteem by everyone, to the point where the greats like Laurie Moles, Clary Sweeney, even later in life Michael Ilsley, all engaged his services.
Oh, well, Dad was such a great form student that he knew wherever the horses had to line up. And when it came to big races, he wasn't fussed at all. He wasn't a nervous sort of person, but very switched on, and he never lost his nerve right up until the day he died. He could have went out and drove against anybody then.
There's also renowned, Darren, for having stopwatches, particularly at the trials. He knew what every horse was doing.
Well, he did, and plus I had a photographic memory, so he'd come to me and ask me which horse was which. So that was a really good thing. But a very good punter. When he thought they could win, they usually did.
Darren, 1988, I can still remember the scenes after your father drove one of his masterly drives with our maestro, the second stringer, for his good friend Bob Knight, taking out the Inter-Dominion.
Yeah, well, the great thing of that, he actually won on my grandfather's birthday, so it was a bit of a double celebration at that time. But he never hit the horse. They were coming at him. He never panicked. Maestro was a really lovely horse, but he didn't like the whip, and he just sat there and just kept getting to him, and he won the race.
Yeah, I think the scenes that particular night were very emotional. I don't know whether if you backed our maestro or not, I think you were very pleased to see J.E. Binskin on the Inter-Dominion honour roll.
Well, I think because of his hometown track, made a big difference. He never really had many opportunities to win an Inter-Dominion, and like I said, my grandfather's birthday, everyone was there, so it was a great night.
Darren, we'll never forget the deeds of the great J.E. Binskin, and thanks for taking time to have a little trip down memory lane and honouring this great man.
No, it's my pleasure.